The sun was already leaning westward when Chika lowered his fishing basket from his shoulder and set it on the grassy bank of the river Olosi. He was a young man of 25, tall and strong, with skin the deep brown of fertile earth and eyes sharp like an eagle's. His hair curled tightly on his head, and his body carried the hardened strength of someone who walked with his hands every day. Chika was known in the village as a man of quiet character. He did not boast, he did not quarrel, and though many maidens cast lingering eyes at him when he walked through the marketplace, he remained humble and focused on his work. His father had died when he was a boy, and his mother, who once sold palm oil, had followed soon after. Alone, Chika grew into manhood with only the land and river as his companions. The river Olosi was not just water to the people of Umuoka. It was alive. The elders often said that the river had a spirit, an ancient goddess who dwelled in its depths. The children were warned never to swim too far into the dark waters, for they might never return. Fishermen poured libations before casting their nets, whispering prayers to appease whatever forces guarded the currents. And yet, despite the fear, the river provided fish, fresh water, and fertile soil. It was both giver and taker, blessing and curse. Chika, more than anyone, respected this balance. That evening, as the last light painted the surface of the river in golden ripples, he sat on a smooth stone and rinsed his face. The air was cool and carried a faint fragrance of water lilies. But underneath that, there was something else, a sound. He froze. It was not the croak of frogs, nor the chatter of birds, nor the rush of current against rocks. It was a voice. Soft, distant, almost like singing. Chika tilted his head. The voice rose and fell with the rhythm of the flowing river, weaving through the air like a flute. For a moment, his heart hammered in fear. The stories of the elders rushed back. The river goddess sings to lure men into the water. If you answer, she will take you. But curiosity, sharp as a hook, bit into him. He stood and peered into the shimmering surface. Nothing unusual. Only his reflection staring back. Then he saw it. A glimmer, like silver beneath the waves. It darted quickly, gone before he could blink. Chika's breath caught in his throat. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it might be a trick of the fading sunlight. Yet the singing continued, faint but undeniable. Who is there? Chika called out before he could stop himself. His voice cracked the silence. The singing ceased instantly. The river grew still, as though holding its breath. Even the cicadas in the trees seemed to hush. Chika swallowed. His feet itched to run, but his body rooted itself to the ground. After a long pause, the waters rippled, and something, or someone, emerged. At first, it looked like the crown of a head, hair black as night and long as raffia strands, glistening with droplets of water. Then a face appeared, smooth, luminous, more beautiful than any maiden Chika had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly, as if moonlight lived beneath it, and her eyes were deep pools of green, shimmering like emeralds. Chika staggered back, almost tripping over his fishing basket. His heart thundered so loudly he thought she must hear it. The woman rose further, revealing shoulders slender yet strong, draped in strands of riverweed that looked like jeweled veils. But beneath the surface, Chika caught a glimpse of scales glinting like polished bronze. A tail. A fish tail. The breath left his chest. A mummy water, he thought. A goddess of the river. For a long moment, neither spoke. She stared at him with an intensity that made his knees weak, as though she was searching his soul. Then, in a voice soft as the murmur of water, she spoke. You heard my song. Chika licked his lips, unsure whether to kneel, run, or answer. I thought it was the wind. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. The wind does not carry songs, only whispers. He could not deny her beauty, but fear gripped him. The stories told of men who disappeared after seeing the river goddess. Some were taken into her underwater palace, never to return. Others were driven mad, their minds shattered by the vision. Why do you show yourself to me? Chika asked cautiously. The goddess tilted her head, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders. Because you are kind. You sit by this river not to boast, not to steal, not to curse. You sit in silence, and you listen. Few men listen. Her words pierced him deeply. All his life, Chika had been overlooked, thought of as quiet, unimportant. Yet here, this divine being was saying she had seen his heart. Still, fear nodded at him. What do you want from me? For the first time, her eyes softened with something like weariness. She glanced at the basket by his side. Food, she whispered. I am hungry. Chika blinked. Of all the requests he expected from a goddess, this was not one. Hungry. Could a spirit feel hunger? His hands trembled slightly as he opened the basket. Inside lay a modest catch of tilapia and catfish, still wet and glistening. He hesitated. To offer food to a goddess was dangerous, it could bind a man to her forever. Yet to refuse her could mean death. Slowly, he lifted a fish and placed it on a large leaf. With careful steps, he set it near the water's edge. Take, he said quietly. The goddess leaned forward. With graceful movements, she reached out, her fingers delicate yet strong, and took the offering. She lifted it to her lips, and for the first time, Chika saw something human in her, a simple, raw need. She ate. Chika watched in silence, heart pounding. He had fed the goddess. Would he be cursed or blessed? Only time would tell. When she finished, she raised her gaze to him again. There was gratitude in her eyes. And then, she did something unexpected. She lifted her hand and opened her palm. Resting there was a pearl, round, lustrous, glowing faintly like the moon itself. For your kindness, she said, placing it gently on the stone beside him. A gift. Chika stared at it, his mind whirling. A pearl like that was worth more than gold in the markets. But what unsettled him most was how it seemed to pulse, as though alive. By the time he looked up, she was already sinking back into the river. The water closed around her, leaving only ripples. The voice of the goddess lingered in his ears as dusk wrapped the land. Every tear I shed many nights after that strange meeting, remember Chika found himself returning to the banks of Chika River stood frozen with a restless staring heart. At the pearl, while the first told no one what he had seen. His life still sat wrapped in cloth inside his clay pot at home, glowing faintly in the dark like a hidden star. He could not bring himself to sell it or even show it to anyone. Something in him told him it was not an ordinary stone to be traded in the market. The villagers noticed a change in him. He grew quiet, quieter than before. His eyes often wandered toward the river when others were speaking, and sometimes he forgot to answer when spoken to. Some laughed that perhaps Chika was falling in love with a spirit, but they said it as a joke, never knowing how close they were to the truth. On the seventh evening, when the sky blushed orange and purple, he returned once again to the riverbank. He carried his small calabash of water and a little roasted yam wrapped in leaves, his supper. He was not expecting company, yet in his heart, he hoped. The air was still, heavy with the scent of wet earth. Crickets began their chorus, and fireflies blinked like tiny lamps in the tall grasses. Chika sat on his usual stone, broke a piece of yam, and dipped it in palm oil. Just as he lifted it to his mouth, a ripple spread across the water. His heart skipped. He lowered the yam and waited. The ripples grew, spreading wider, and then, she appeared. The goddess rose slowly from the river, water sliding down her shoulders like a silver veil. Her hair fanned out behind her, black as midnight, her eyes glowing with that unearthly green light. But this time, she did not stop at the water's edge. Step by step, she walked onto the shore. Chika's breath caught in his chest. The lower half of her body shimmered, and for a moment he thought he saw the glint of scales. But as she walked, her tail seemed to dissolve, leaving behind long, graceful legs. By the time she stood before him, she looked like any other woman, except no ordinary woman could possess such beauty. Chika's throat went dry. He bowed his head. "River goddess," he whispered. "Lift your face," she said gently. "Do not fear me." He obeyed, though his heart pounded. She glanced at the yam in his hand. "Will you share your food again?" Without hesitation, he held it out. "Take all of it." Her lips curved faintly. "You are generous. But eat too, Chika. A man whose staffs cannot stand strong." The way she spoke his name startled him. "You know me." "I know all who drink from my waters," she replied softly. "I have watched this village for many seasons. I know the hearts of men, greedy ones, cruel ones, kind ones. Yours is different." Her words sank deep into him. No one had ever spoken to him that way. He had always been just Chika, the quiet orphan boy, the fisherman with nothing. Yet here, the river goddess saw something more. They ate together in silence for a while. She nibbled the yam delicately, as though she had not tasted such food in ages. When she finished, she cupped water from his calabash and drank, her throat moving with a grace that made his eyes linger. "Why do you come to me?" Chika asked finally, his voice low. Her gaze drifted toward the river, as though the answer lay hidden there. "Because I am lonely." The word struck him like a stone. A goddess, lonely. She turned back to him, and he saw sadness shimmering in her eyes. "Beneath the river, I am surrounded by riches, by pearls and treasures men would kill for. But none of it warms my heart. None of it speaks to me. Do you know what it means to be looked upon with fear, never with love?" Chika swallowed hard. He understood more than she knew. His life in the village had always been marked by solitude. People respected him, yes, but they did not draw close. His silence, his poverty, his difference, these had built walls between him and others. "Yes," he said simply. She studied his face as though weighing his soul again. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. "Chika, there is something you must know. Every tear that falls from my eyes becomes a pearl. Each drop is a part of my heart. I gave you one that night because I wanted you to remember me. But you must never show greed for them, for greed destroys men faster than any curse." Chika nodded, the weight of her words pressing on him. "I will never ask for them. I swear it." For the first time, she smiled fully, and it was like the moon breaking through clouds. "Then perhaps I have chosen well." Silence fell between them, but it was not an empty silence. It was alive, filled with the sound of crickets, the whisper of the river, and the beating of two hearts that had begun to find each other. At length, she stood. Her form shimmered again, her legs blurring into the outline of a tail. "I must return before the night grows deep." Chika rose too, reluctant to let her go. "Will you come again?" Her eyes softened. "If your heart remains kind, I will." And with that, she stepped back into the water. The river closed around her, swallowing her form. Only the ripples remained, circling wider and wider until they vanished into the current. Chika stood alone on the shore, staring at the spot where she had disappeared. But this time, he did not feel fear. He felt something else, something that burned in his chest and made the night air sweet. Hope. The days that followed were unlike any Chika had ever known. Each evening, as the sun dipped behind the iroko trees and shadows stretched across the riverbank, he found himself drawn once more to the waters of Ulosi. And each evening, she came. The villagers began to notice his new